What makes the perfect cup of coffee? Coffee is everywhere. Shops, stores, gas stations, merchandise. You can make it as fancy as a frappuccino or keep it pure with a simple cup of black coffee. It's part of the fabric of everyday life. People rely on coffee as part of their morning routine.
I got you a triple espresso that I'm going to put here right out of reach so Sleepyhead has to get up to get it.
Die twice.
But what goes into that iconic cup? People consume coffee all the time, but as coffee novices, we were unaware of where it really comes from and why people love it so much. We reached out to Emily Gerard at Starbucks to help us on our coffee discovery journey.
I'm going to tell you kind of my basic history of how coffee first became, and you're gonna laugh because it's a hysterical story.
Oh, okay.
But it's true. The origin of coffee is actually in Ethiopia. So that's where coffee was first cultivated and everything like that. The story behind it, or the mythos behind it, is by a guy named Kaldi, the goat herder. So Kaldi was a goat herder. He had his little herd of goats. One day he was wondering why his goats were super hyper and really energized. He noticed that they were eating these berries off of a bush. Kaldi got curious. Once he figured out the goats weren't getting poisoned, he decided to test it, and he actually made a tea out of the coffee cherries and the coffee leaves. He found that he got a lot more energy and that he was just ready for the day the more he drank this tea. So then he introduced it to monks. The monks realized that they could go through their morning and afternoon prayers without being tired by drinking this tea. Then it moved to Spain. And then once it kind of got to the Spanish area, it stayed there until the Swiss, or I think maybe Dutch traders, smuggled a coffee tree onto their ship, tried to plant it, realized that it couldn't grow in that region. They had to figure something else out. So then they started to explore all of these regions around the equator, which is what's known as the coffee belt. So the coffee belt is between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. And in that region are literally the only places that you can successfully grow coffee.
Let's talk about this. Coffee is a finicky crop that won't flourish unless the conditions are just right. The regions along the coffee belt are so ideal for growing these plants because coffee trees need hot, humid climates with nutrient-dense soil. Most coffee variations do well at higher elevation as well. There are 3 main growing regions along the belt, and every bean has a different flavor: the Americas, the Asian Pacific, and the African region. Based on the growing region, the coffee tastes different. Central and Latin America bring out citrus and chocolate notes due to the soil in the region. And the African region specializes in fruity notes like berries and stone fruits because the abundance of fruits that are grown in that region seep into and alter the soil. In Asia, the coffees have flavors with huge notes of ginseng, cinnamon, and star anise. And it's not just the way that these coffees are grown that affects the way they taste, it's also the way they're brewed and served. According to Emily, a Latin American medium roast coffee is better served iced, and an Asian Pacific coffee would be better brewed and served hot to draw out the spice flavors. An African coffee can be done hot or iced based on the person's preference. Some people prefer spicier notes, or they like the fruitiness of an African coffee. We wanted to hear from a regular at the coffee shop on his relationship with coffee and his own personal preference.
So this is Jed. He's one of our regular customers. Jed is also an engineer, and he's one of the sweetest men you will ever meet.
My name is Jed. And I've been drinking coffee for about, more than 50 years, I can say. My mom got me hooked on it.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, my mom used to buy the green beans, and she had a little drum, metal drum, with a little sliding window on it.
Oh.
And then they have a Bunsen burner, which is like open flame. And they fill it. The Bunsen burner is like they used to. Wasn't gas like these days. They have propane in it. What they do is that they used to put kerosene in the bottom of it and then light it up, pressure it, pump it, pressurize it, turn it on, and then use a match to light it up. And then they had like a two couple of sticks, coming up like U-shaped, and then they put the drum on it, and then you would turn it with your hand, while it is, while it's roasting, and then after like a minute or so, my mom would get the spoon because it's very hot. She'd open the window and look at it and look at the color. So she really figured out how much to roast the beans by the color. So when it's done, she'd take it out, open the window up, empty it out, let it cool for a little bit. And then we had a little grinder, a good grinder, and then it had a drawer on the bottom, and then it had a turning. It had a handle where you can, you turn it. So you put the beans in there, and then you turn the handle, and then he grinds it, and then we pull the drawer out. And you could adjust also the fineness on it. So I did that when I was used to do that with her when I was 4 or 5 years old.
Wow.
And then she would make the coffee, and then she'd give me a little taste of it. So it became in my blood. So I grew up drinking coffee every day, And
For you, what is your perfect cup of coffee?
the perfect cup of coffee is the one that my mom used to make. That's the perfect cup of coffee.
Strong coffee with caramel.
Yeah, not necessarily, because not necessarily very strong, because the coffee is an art.
Yes.
And Starbucks, they really mastered this art. So they really, from what I see, is that they really have perfect, cup of coffee for every person.
Starbucks is one of the biggest companies in the world. Most people have been to a Starbucks at one point or another. We wondered if the culture surrounding Starbucks differed from that of a smaller local coffee shop. So we're here today at Jameson Brown, a combined roastery and coffee shop.
Hi, I'm Becca. I'm the assistant manager at Jameson Brown.
At Jameson Brown, they roast their own beans and make their own blends and coffees.
The owner of this business started roasting with his friend a long time ago as a hobby. He was an accountant and just wanted to roast coffee after work. People love to come meet their friends and family for coffee, and it kind of brings everyone together, I feel like it genuinely makes people happy. Yeah, even just the smell, coming into a coffee shop, it's it kind of makes your body relax in a way.
For a place that roasts their own beans, what makes the coffee good? Well, it's not a secret. Becca emphasized the importance of good beans as the foundation for a great cup of coffee.
Depends on where you're sourcing your beans from. You can have all the science down and have everything written out in formula and in a booklet, but if you're starting with bad beans, it's not gonna happen. You're gonna end up with a bad cup of coffee every time. It's all about the quality of the bean. It doesn't matter what the shop looks like, the type of people that work there. As long as everyone's friendly and the quality's there, that's all that matters.
Jameson Brown also sells bags of their beans that they roast in-house.
A lot of our sales come from that. People wanting to try stuff out. Because it's one thing getting some coffee from behind the counter and having someone serve you, but it's a whole different experience when you buy coffee and take it home and make it for yourself. And sometimes they come back and they're like, I want that same bean, or I want to try something new, and then they start getting really experimental, and it's really cool to see people want to learn and want to expand their knowledge about coffee.
Overall, there is a real overarching similarity between Jameson Brown and Starbucks. Sure, they both make coffee and specialty drinks, but there's something bigger that they offer. They're a safe place of gathering. The magnetism of a coffee shop may not necessarily be in the coffee. Emily is somewhere rolling her eyes right now because she's told us many a time, coffee is about the people. Every time we've visited Starbucks, we've seen so many different kinds of people. Sometimes they're there to study and do work, or they're there to meet up with someone else. It's a gathering space for kids after school, or it's for coffee enthusiasts like Judd. The morning we visited Jameson Brown, we saw young adults with their kids having breakfast and couples enjoying the sidewalk seating and great weather outside the shop. There were families, but there were also people there to focus and work. And even when people are there alone, they're not really alone. When they step into that shop, they become part of a community. Yes, coffee is a drink. Have it hot, have it cold, have it at 1 a.m. because you're pulling an all-nighter. There's so many different ways to bring out the flavors and nuances of coffee. But there's more to it than that. There are people behind this drink that have a true appreciation for the depth of its flavor and the process involved in crafting the perfect cup. When you enjoy a cup of coffee, you're tasting not only the work of the farmer, but also the processor, the roaster, and the barista. So, what makes the perfect cup of coffee?
I think it starts with the person. Coffee, when it comes down to it, is all about the person drinking it, the person who brew it, the person who transported it, and the person who, in the end, is going to be enjoying it. There's many different aspects of coffee. It's not just one thing. It's not just one person. It takes an entire team and different resources to produce a good cup